And coming up on this episode of the MartyMariner Show, well, it's our first show for 2024. Happy New Year, everybody. Trust that everyone had a decent break, or I hope at least you got to have a break. How much football was there over the Christmas New Year period? It was absolutely outstanding. Long may it continue too, by the way, and some fantastic results by both our men's and women's teams. And long may that continue as well. I'm sure we'll be talking about in the episodes ahead. Speaking of what's ahead, well, we're about halfway through the season for the men's and women's competitions. It's time to pull out the report card, ladies and gentlemen. And to join me today to have a bit of a flick through the first part of the men's season, two fellas who are no strangers to us here at the MartyMariner Show. Adam Kwasnik, absolute club legend. He's joining me for a bit of a chat, bit of a chinwag, a bit of a conversation. Looking forward to getting his thoughts on the start of the season. And one of our favourites here on the show, Dan McCamley from Coast 963 FM. The A team is going to join us as well to tell us his thoughts on the first half of the men's season under Coach Mark Jackson. Interesting to see what the fellas thinking about that. We'll get to that very, very soon. And as for guests, well, look, rumour has it, which is totally unsubstantiated, totally untrue, and very much false and made up. But I heard on the grapevine that one Brad Tapp had only one wish for his birthday. He didn't want a Porsche. He didn't want a mansion. He wanted to appear on the MartyMariner Show. And who am I, a little old YouTuber, podcaster, to deny him this opportunity? Brad Tapp is going to join us for a bit of a chat today too. Currently injured, hoping he gets back very, very soon. But the impact that he's made in the couple of games he's had this season has been absolutely outstanding. And he's a great fella to have a chat to, and I'm really looking forward to catching up with him, finding out a little bit more about him and what his hopes and dreams are for the future. It'll be an absolute cracker of an episode. Hope you stick around right to the very, very end. Just want to take the opportunity as well to say we are that close, whatever measurement that may be, to have 200 subscribers on our YouTube channel. If you don't subscribe to any channels, it is an easy thing to do so. Jump onto YouTube, find the MartyMariner Show. You'll find a big subscribe button there as well. There'll also be one on the screen here as well, which you can press. Costs you absolutely nothing to do so. Helps us spread the word about the mighty Central Coast Mariners. And from what I'm learning, plenty of people around the planet love our club in all sorts of different medias. You sort of see on the Facebook pages and all sorts of places that, very much a global community that we are starting to grow. So much appreciated if you're a YouTube viewer to click that subscribe button. If you are not and you prefer to have us in your ears when it comes to your morning exercise, and what would inspire you any more than listening to the MartyMariner Show as you're going for your morning walk or driving in the car on the way to the game, how good would that be? You can listen to us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on iHeartRadio. There's a whole range of different podcasting platforms that we broadcast through. And however, the different podcasting platforms know that you're there, whether you're giving that a thumbs up, a plus, a tick, register, don't know. They're all different. Just show that you're there, show that you're listening. And again, we appreciate that very, very much. And the very last plug, which is probably a pretty cool one too, our bucket hats are arriving in the very much this week. We believe that they'll be coming in. And I'll be putting that up on our Facebook page, which thank you too if you've joined our Facebook page. I think there's about 1,600 people on that now. If you haven't joined us on Facebook, come and join the page. All the episodes will end up on there as well, and other bits and pieces that are happening around the Mariners. I'll try and get as much on there as I can for you as well. But we'll be having the bucket hats out there, so keep an eye out for that, and you can have a bit of a look. And if you like one, we'll be putting an order out there very, very soon. All right, I think that's all the boxes ticked that I wanted to get done before we introduced our panel. About time to get this show rolling. Got some very impatient gentlemen waiting in the background. We better not keep them waiting any longer. Welcome to 2024. It's the MartyMariner Show. And welcome back to the MartyMariner Show. And as I said in the introduction, well, it's that time of the year where about halfway through where we need to have a bit of a look, put a bit of a report card together to have a bit of a look about where our men's team is at. And rather than do it by myself and sound totally boring, just giving my opinion, I brought in a couple of experts, and believe it or not, they actually are. One is an absolute legend of the club. He's no stranger to us here on the MartyMariner Show. Adam Kwasnik, how are you doing, mate?
Good, Marty. Thanks for having me, mate. This is going to be an interesting conversation.
I think it will be an interesting conversation. That's why I wanted more people, because me talking to myself, well, probably people see that happening all the time. So now, looking forward to maybe a few debates on a few points. We'll see how we go. And one of our faves here on the show from Coast FM 963 FM, the A team, who's got a massive shift on Sunday, needs to be putting in double the hours for double the pay. Dan McCamley, how you doing, mate?
Not too bad. Look, double zero is zero. So I'll put that invoice in and we'll see how we go, mate. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm really enjoying calling the women's game this season for the Central Coast Mariners ladies side, and obviously then on the sidelines for the men's as well. And yeah, looking forward to this chat because it's been a bit of an up and down season, and there's still plenty of a ways to go.
Absolutely, mate. And we'll bit of a sneak that we'll be having a version for their women's team next week. So all of you MartyMariner Show viewers, check that out for next week. But it is up to the men today. Quaz, I just want to start with you. Just players going the off season now. We had an awesome season last year, win the grand final, boys out celebrating. They come into camp. Obviously, a few had already said they were leaving, Cummings and a few of the others. But everyone else coming back in, what's it like when you first come back? Is there any word of, hey, are you sticking around? What are you thinking? What's it like when you first get back into training?
Oh, back in the day, you sort of knew towards the end of the season, or at the end of the season, that whether players were coming or going. It was essentially at the end of the season, signings were made, and players were let go. But a little bit different now, as you mentioned. Obviously, the boys sort of came in. They already knew that someone like Jason Cummings was leaving, and then not far into preseason, you had a few more players leave, and you had the manager leave as well. So it was very interesting times. I don't know how the players would sort of react to some such big departures, but they started the season slow, and then they sort of got on with things. But it's a scary thought to know that you've got a championship winning squad. You'd like to think as a player you want to hold on to that whole squad if possible. But with the chopping and changing, it'd be definitely interesting times.
Absolutely. And Dan, as obviously we sit on the other side of the touchline and we get to watch it, but as fans, we got to celebrate the grand final win for the club. Great night, great season. Everyone's on a high. With the departures that we knew, but then they started to be, it was almost like this procession that sort of they were announced. What were your feelings? Was it kind of like, hang on, is it last one out, turn off the light? What was it kind of feeling like for you?
I mean, to go back to that night, one of the greatest nights of my life, being on the sideline and seeing that performance, and then it's kind of the perfect storm for the Mariners. They've had that success. They're a selling club. They've openly admitted that. And that leads to players departing, and especially because they're young players. The Mariners promote so many young players. Of course, they're going to go and seek opportunities overseas. You can't begrudge them for that. You've still got the bones of that team there. You've still got your skipper and Danny Vukovic at the back. A couple of midfielders still there as well. But as you said, the longer time went on in that off season, and the more and more people that left, you started to get a little bit concerned how the club might do this season. It's not that far removed from the dark old days where they weren't winning many games, and you hoped that it wasn't going to go back there. Now, to start the season with 4 losses, I'm sure didn't alleviate any of those concerns. But to Mark Jackson's credit and the club's credit, they've turned it around, and they sit in a nice position on the table off the back of, I think, a 9 or 10 game unbeaten run in all competitions. You just hope that the Tulio departure isn't the straw that breaks the camel's back. He was that one player from the side last season, that quality player that stuck around and was really starting to hit his straps. Now he's gone. How's the club going to fill that hole?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And Quaz, you're probably, again, more qualified than us to be able to answer it. But when a player decides that they want to move on and they're under contract, what is that thought process? Because I hear two different schools of thought. One is, well, if he wants to go, what's the point in having him around? Because if he wants to leave, his performance may drop, etc., etc. But then there's the other side. Well, hey, we signed him. This is when we signed him too. He's our player. I can't just walk out of my job if I'm contracted to do certain things. The difference. What's your school of thought on that?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. If I go, towards Tullio, you're not just talking about any player. You're talking about the best player in the league.
Absolutely.
And obviously, mid-season, he's found a move elsewhere. And if you're a teammate of his, you want to wish him all the best. I've said times before, it's a short amount of time in your career. You got to make the most of it financially and from a life experience point of view as well. So I'm sure majority of the players would have been happy to, for him to leave and leave on good terms. He did. But at the back of their minds, in the same way, they're thinking, well, we've just lost the league's best player, and the club, like you mentioned, they're a selling club. But I'm always of the thought that if you're going to sell a player, you got to bring in someone of at least equal quality or better, and they haven't done that. So it's a bit of a concern, but I'm sure the players, they're all banding together. They want to get on with things, and they got the grand finalists coming up on Sunday. I'm sure they'll get on with it and put on a good performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dan, it wasn't just the players. Monty goes as well. To me, you don't begrudge anyone taking opportunity, and for a coach, the same as a player. These opportunities come along, and you got to, I guess, take them when you do. But the timing couldn't have been really any worse for the Mariners, could it?
No, especially the departure of Nick Montgomery. And when you consider the signings that were made in the off-season as Angel Torres, that's a Nick Montgomery signing. Again, you don't begrudge him for taking an opportunity over there in Scotland. He's earned that. The way that the team's performed here in Australia over the last couple of seasons, and good luck to him over there. But to have your manager leave at that point in the off season would have been tough, and that, to me, you don't want to give them a pass because the start to the season was pretty bad. But there's plenty of excuses if they wanted to go down that path of, well, this is why we started slow, and to have your manager leave at that point in the season. And I think there was an AFC Cup game there where they didn't have anybody in charge. They were just running with whoever was still at the club. So it's been a tough transition for them, but they've seemed to have found their feet under Mark Jackson. They're playing some pretty good football. He's changed a couple of things up from how Montgomery liked to set his teams up and the way his teams wanted to play, and that's his prerogative. He's the new manager, but I think that little bit of a transition period, you saw that in the first sort of 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And Quaz, a new gaffer comes in, and I guess, a lot of times we sort of see it where a new manager comes in after an unsuccessful season. The old boss has been kicked out, new boss comes in, here we go. It's quite unique, isn't it, for a guy to come into a championship-winning side, then it's basically, we're taking half of your starting 11 away and all your best players. Good luck. That's unique, right?
Oh, absolutely. You've just won the league, won the championship, and all of a sudden, the manager decides to go just before the season starts, and a guy comes in like Mark Jackson. He's quickly found out the landscape and what he's got at his disposal. It's a big change, and it's a difficult one. And I think Mark Jackson, to his credit, has done a remarkable job. Dan obviously mentioned the slow start. Yep, obviously transitional. A few things that he wanted to change and implement. It takes a little bit of time for the players to understand what he wants. And unfortunately, it came in the season. He didn't really have any preseason games to do that. But like we've mentioned here before, they're sort of on the right track again. And let's hope that they can have a strong second half to the season.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And Dan, I was actually having this discussion the other day. Obviously, as Quaz just said, Jacko doesn't get a pre-season. He doesn't get to sort of run the different things. He's, we're learning on the run, I guess, in one sense. Do you think the Asian Cup, with the quality or thereabouts, if you want to call it that, of what we were playing against, Do you think that was a good thing for him because we were having these games that may not have been at the level of A-League, that he could implement these things a little bit better? Do you think that was a little bit of a godsend?
Yeah, I think it was a godsend in regards to that. I also think it was a godsend in regards to the results at the time. Because he was getting results in that AFC Cup and he wasn't getting results in the league. Now, the noise was starting to get a little bit loud, especially after 4 defeats in a row about was he the right choice for the club? Was he the right appointment? There were other names thrown around at the time that obviously didn't get the job, that some pockets of the fan base thought probably deserved a chance. I think those results in the AFC Cup quietened down that noise a little bit and gave him an opportunity to settle in and probably gave him an opportunity to go through his squad and see the players that he could rely on. He's best 11, and I think it's worked out in the end in the league. But I really think that AFC Cup run, and it's still going, that's back in February, but I think that run early on in the season gave him a little bit of a grace period. It took a little bit of pressure off him. Now, if he hadn't have qualified out of the group, and that was a real possibility heading into that last game, then, who knows what would have happened. But he got the job done. He got the results. And I think it allowed him to really find out his best team and the way that he wanted to play this season.
Yeah. And Quaz, as part of a playing group, new boss comes in. I'll start at the beginning. Does Jacko come in and go, look, this is the way I know you've been playing under Monty. I need to kind of adapt from that because I can't come in and just totally change everything. Does he say, well, look, I know we've been doing this. I'm going to add my part to it because then it helps the playing group, keep rolling? Or does he just say, no, this is what we're doing. We're starting again?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think, if anything, he hasn't come out and made big statements when he's been introduced to the playing squad. He hasn't exactly told him this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it. It would have been, little subtle hints here and there, working on things in training. And as I said earlier, it takes time for players to adjust, and he would have known that as well. And it was unfortunate, that it came at the start of the season, and like we said, 0 from 4 in the first 4 games. But then, like Dan mentioned, those opportunities in the Champions League where he was picking up results against lesser opposition, but you were able to implement what you really want to see your team playing in the league. And, he did that and had success at the same time. And now we're seeing the fruits of it all. Obviously, they've been on a 9-10 game, unbeaten run, and they're a fantastic team to watch. There's a few things that I'll worry about at times, but they're easy on the eye and they're picking up results, and that's what matters most.
Mate, it wouldn't be Mariner seasons to watch if we didn't have anything to worry about, mate. We've done it for, 17 years now, is it? I don't know. Can't remember a year where we haven't. And Dan, in those 4 games, we mentioned the start in the A-League, 4 losses. You get to talk to the boys. You get to, interview, and there was very much that stiff upper lip, new gaffer, new team, takes time. But did you detect there was a little bit of a concern, a worry amongst the players that there was kind of I'm saying it, I'm really hoping it's the case?
Yeah, concern. I don't think concern, frustration, definitely.
Yeah.
Talking to them, especially post game, and coming from such a successful season last season, speaking to people like Danny Vukovic or Max Ballard or Josh Nisbet, who had come out of that championship winning side, and the way that they were playing, the way that they were conceding goals, they weren't happy with. Obviously, the results they weren't happy with. But I don't think there was ever any concern that they would turn it around. I think they had faith that with their ability, the squad that they had, that they'd be able to turn it around. As Quaz has alluded to, the lack of a preseason with the new coach, they were having their preseason on the fly essentially. So, the 4 games to start the season, just the way that they were conceding goals was concerning. They've really turned that around. They conceded so many goals in transition in those first 4 games, and speaking to them about that, that we would pose that question to them post game, and there was something that they were really working on in training during the weeks, and it seems to have paid dividends because they've really stemmed the flow of those transition goals of late.
Yeah, and Quaz, when we appointed Mark Jackson too, What was your initial thoughts on that? Because there were, as Dan alluded to, local coaches, Australian coaches around that, should they have had the opportunity? A lot of noise. This guy had been, relegated with Milton Keynes Dons and had been a bit of an assistant here or there. Did he have the pedigree? What was your initial thoughts when he came out?
Well, I don't want to be disrespectful. I had no idea that the club was heading in that direction. And when he got appointed, I had no idea about him. I had to look him up and find out a little bit more. And you mentioned the Aussie coaches. I'm of the belief now that we've got a lot of quality Aussie coaches. They just need to be given the opportunity. And unfortunately, the club didn't go down that path, and that's fine. Look, they've appointed Mark Jackson, and I think, he's sort of got the team into a good position halfway through the season, and I hope it can continue. But look, I didn't know much about him. I've met the guy, extremely nice guy. There's obviously a connection there with the owner as well, Rich Peel, and the club headed in that direction. And let's hope that it all works out for positive in the end.
Well, absolutely. And Dan, again, what were your thoughts? Because I was the same. I had to go look up and say, Mark Jackson wasn't a name that I thought of straight away. And I guess in speaking to him, when I spoke to him a few months ago, I was impressed straight away by his attitude, his work ethic. I loved what he was talking about bringing into the club. Was that your initial thoughts as well?
Yeah, look, I'm in the same boat. It was out of left field, not somebody that had been mentioned or you'd even heard of, really. And then to Quaz's point, or your point, Marty, when you dug a little bit deeper and you had a look at his record and his career and where he'd been, you sort of had concerns. You were like, well, is this the right appointment for the team? And Mark is unbelievably approachable. He's a great chat. As you said, he talks all the right stuff in regards to what he wants to implement and how he wants his teams to play. But it's easy to talk the talk. And I think that first sort of month, yes, he was talking that talk, but you weren't seeing it on the pitch. And I think that's where people got a little bit concerned. It's easy to say you want to play this way and implement these things, but then when you're not getting the results on the pitch, you start, looking around and going, well, why didn't we appoint this guy? Why didn't we appoint that guy? This guy was interested. That's certainly quietened down over the last 9 or 10 games. But initially, it was a bit of a shock. And you just weren't sure what you were going to get. And coming from an era where we had Stadge and then into Monty, where the team really built up to that grand final win, you were concerned that, maybe we'd reach those heights and we were on the slippery dip back down. But I think he's righted the ship and he's done an outstanding job in implementing his beliefs and his philosophies, and the team's playing that way at the moment.
Absolutely. And Quaz, in those first 4 games, I know Dan mentioned the whole defending off transition kind of thing as well, but there just seemed to be, a few people saying, are their hearts in it? Is there too many people disappearing and there's not the same as last year and all that? It turned around in a derby, an F3 derby against Newcastle, where we got the win. Could we have not planned that any better? Because to me, if we'd have lost that derby, I think this whole season could have taken another turn. I think that could have really been the thing. Do you think it was the derby that just got those boys saying, hey, look, we know this is the derby anyway? That gave them just that lift, that just gave them that little bit more of a push?
Yeah, it's definitely a fair point, Marty. And we always love winning against Newcastle. And obviously, that first win against them for the season was a fantastic result. And obviously, they've gone on with it. Obviously, we're halfway through the season. But, yeah, I think winning a derby, it definitely, kick-started their season. It wasn't the best performance, but at that time it was all about the result. And you mentioned those subtle changes that Mark Jackson is sort of implemented with the team. I sort of love watching them play, especially when they have possession. But I still think they're really, really vulnerable. They have a back three when they're in possession. They allow the fullbacks to go well up the park. But when we lose the ball, it looks very, very scary at times that we're going to concede. And as Dan mentioned, though, they have, those transitional goals have dried up for the opposition of late against the Central Coast Mariners, which is fantastic to see. They've obviously been working on it. But it's a little bit of Russian roulette when you get teams that can really break quickly, and we've only got three in sort of rest defence. It can really hurt us, and fortunately, it hasn't of late. And let's hope that can continue.
Absolutely, mate. It's our version of Ange Ball, and I know what a massive that you love what the whole Tottenham Hotspur thing happening, being an Arsenal fan, but yeah, I've got to admit, some of the part, it's like I'm old school sometimes. I might put it in the other half or get numbers behind the ball, we'll start again. But yeah, this passing across the 6-yard box, my God, I thought I had grey hairs the last couple of years. They've really, really increased. Dan, we talked about the defending on transition just then, but we started to pick up results. We started to pick up a few wins, and what else did you notice, especially for yourself? Because those home games, you're on the sideline, you're hearing the talk, you're seeing what's coming through. What else did you notice that was there then that wasn't there in those first 4 games?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of a change to the structure of the team. At one point, he was playing Tulio in behind Wall or Reese, and I don't know, for mine, he was drifting in and out of games and wasn't getting involved. And when your best player is doing that, it's a concern. And he went to a sort of a 4-3-3, and I brought it up with him in a press conference, and he kind of not laughed it off, but said, "Oh, we don't really have a formation. We play fluidly and all that sort of stuff." But for mine, pushing Josh Nisbet further forward into that 10 role, he is so good at picking up those pockets of space, and his low center of gravity allows him to turn and beat defenders if they're tight to him, and he can dribble the ball. He probably doesn't score as many goals as he should, but he can set one up. And Tulio went out wide on the right. And I think having him out wide, you don't want to put him in a box out there, but it freed him up. He was one-on-one against his left back, and he was having a field day probably for the last 5 or 6 games of his career at the Central Coast Mariners, just having that freedom of not being the main guy through the middle of the park and being sort of crowded out in there. They put him out wide and really got him into open pastures, and he scored goals, he set goals up, the party tricks, the flicks over defenders, mate. It was a joy to watch. And I think you saw on the weekend in that 1-1 draw against Victory, without Brad Tapp, Josh Nisbet had to come back into the centre of midfield, and we really missed that link between the midfield and Qual and Reese up top. So I think a lot depends on if Josh Nisbet can get further forward. When he plays further forward, the Mariners look a different team for mine, and they look dangerous going forward. They looked a little bit clunky, a little bit jittery without him. I think that was the main change that Mark Jackson's made. He went to that 3 in the midfield and pushing Josh Nisbet forward, and they had great success from there.
Yeah. And Quaz, if I gave you the checkbook right now, I mean, obviously we just lost Tulio, but I'm sure Richie Beale would be more than happy to give you the checkbook and say, righto, I need to get a play. What position are you looking at? Are you just going straight for that striker? Are you looking for someone wide? Because, I mean, to me, our success last year, I mean, we've still got Nizzy and Maxi in the middle of the park, but we had Silvera and Kololo wide bursting up and down. We had Cummings sitting in the middle who was going to finish everything, and Tulio just drifted around wherever he needed to. Maresh would come on. We've lost that whole kind of arc of forward. We'll talk about the players that are sort of coming into those positions now, how they're going, but where would you go? You got that open checkbook. Where are you looking?
Yeah, look, I do question the depth of the squad, to be honest, overall. And I think for me, the key positions that need to be filled, obviously, Tulio leaving, I think there needs to be, some creator there that comes in. You'd love someone, with young Reese and young Kowal, you'd love someone to be pushing them as well. So bringing in someone like an experienced number 9, I don't know who. And obviously a central defender just to shore things up at the back. Obviously, they've got their act together defensively of late. There's no question about that. But you just want to add that little bit of squad depth. And I think if you add some experience there alongside the youngsters, it can really push the youngsters to another level. I guess it's all about having a balance. It's all about having that open checkbook as well. So it'd be interesting to see what happens in the rest of January, because I do think that the depth will be tested if they don't bring in some players, some key players. But look, that's just me looking in from the outside and from what I've seen. I'm sure everyone's got a different opinion, but I do think there needs to be some reinforcements made.
Yeah, and Dan, are you in the same boat too? That it's that final third of the field that we kind of need to look at.
I mean, to win games, to win championships, you need goals, and Marco Tulio certainly provided those over the last 12 to 18 months. It's going to be hard to replace the goals that both he and Cummings scored. I like the look of Reece. I really like the look of Reece. I think he's played well this season to start this season, and I think between he and Qual, they've got goals in them. Maybe you just worry about service into them. They can get a little bit isolated, especially with the way Jackson plays, and he only plays that one striker through the middle. There are games where Qual is non-existent, and because he's not getting any service. He's a player that likes to play on the defender's shoulder, and he'll get on the end of crosses or balls into the box. And when those aren't coming in, I think that's an issue. And to Quaz's point, when you talk about squad depth, they have an absolutely horrible February coming up. They've got a game on a Tuesday afternoon in Wellington, 60 hours after an away trip, and then they come back, play at home, and then they've got an AFC Cup game as well. They've got a really tough stretch of games in February, and they need a little bit of squad depth. And you can only rely on those young players so much before you burn them out. And they need a little bit of experience in there, I think, to get through that February.
Yeah, I think on average we're playing a game every 3 days or something. It's absolutely ridiculous, the scheduling and stuff like that. And especially too, probably with the injuries, like, with Steele breaking his foot. I know he'll be back in Feb sometime, and Tappy, hopefully he's back very, very soon. But Quaz, that creator, I mean, we talked about Nizzy before, and I mean, were you surprised? Because I knew Nizzy had a pass in him, and I knew he could play a ball, and we all talk about his shooting, goal scoring opportunities and getting more of that. But even this year, to me, he seems to have stepped to another level in playing in that behind the striker, laying the ball off where he can go. Are you surprised, or are you just, this is just what this guy can do?
I am surprised, to be honest. I think he was an out-and-out holder. He just sort of broke up play and sort of scrapped around the middle of the park, similar to what John Hutchison did for the time that he was at the club, one of the club greats. And I think, I thought Nizzy was sort of emulating that to an extent, but he sort of found himself where he's been allowed to sort of adventure, well up the park. And you mentioned his range of passing. He's definitely got that. Dan mentioned the lack of goals that he hasn't scored, and I agree with that. I think his game has gone to another level. If he can add a few goals to his game and continue to assist like he has been, I think we've got a real player on our hands, and hopefully, he doesn't get sold in the near future either. But one player that I do want to say, I just want to mention quickly that's on the books of the club. He's a young player, young boy from Brisbane, Bailey Brantman. He hasn't been given an opportunity yet, but he is a creator. He's got a wonderful left foot. It's somewhat of a wand, if you ask me. He just needs the opportunity. I thought he was going to get it in the AFC Cup towards the end there, but they sort of had to win that last game. But he was on the bench last week against Melbourne Victory. I think he's on the bench again against Melbourne City. It'd be great for him to get an opportunity and break into that team to some extent, because I think he's got a lot to offer.
No, absolutely, yeah. No, good young talent. And I'm sure, as Dan mentioned, with the games coming up, I think we'll have to see him at some stage, because the boys just won't be able to keep on going and stuff like that. Dan, we mentioned Tulio. He's gone now. If the Mariners don't replace Tulio, is that basically, do you think the successes of our season will basically hinge on whether he's replaced or not?
I mean, they need more depth. I love Christian Theoharis. He is an awesome player. The way he played against Melbourne Victory, he's always trying something. He's always trying to beat somebody. He's always looking to get a shot on goal. But he can't be your only right winger. You need somebody pushing him. You need somebody at the left back position pushing Jacob Farrell. Jacob Farrell's been awesome, but if he were to go down, who plays in that position? You need some depth in the squad. They just don't have it. And you're talking about replacing Marco Tulio with, who are you going to replace him with? That's the issue. As Boz said, he's the best player in the league. He was a diamond in the rough when they found him. Good luck replacing Marco Tulio. I don't think you can do it with one player. Not in January, and not the Mariners. So, I think they're going to have to bring a couple of players in and try and get contributions from a few of them to try and emulate what Marco Tulio brought to the team. I think Christian Theoharis is a very skillful player. He played his first probably 90 minutes in a long time the other day against Melbourne Victory. He's been used more as a substitute. So he'll appreciate the opportunity, and he deserves it. But they need they need more depth and they need contributions from many more to make up for the Tulio departure.
And you think too, Quaz, as well as that quality, we're still a very young squad. We've lost a lot of experience. Do you think it's imperative too that we bring not only some young, talented fellas through, like from the academy, like Brad, like you said before, but we actually look for some experience to throw out there as well?
Yeah, well, it's definitely an option. I mean, you've got to keep pushing these young players. And there's two ways of looking at it. If you want to sell these young players, you need to ensure that they've got the right people around them and that they continue to develop and they continue to help the club get results. If you don't bring in experience, you're relying on them solely to do the job by themselves, which I think in the end, could fizzle out very, very quickly. Look, it's a double-edged sword for the club. You sell your best player or the best player in the league. Very hard to replace, as Dan mentioned. I think they need a bit more of a balance. And for me, the balance is to bring in experience. And that might not necessarily mean start this experience, but just push the youngsters at training, get every last drop out of the youngsters at training and help them continue to develop. And look, if they can get that balance right, I'm sure they'll be there at the business end of the season.
Absolutely. And Dan, one of the important thing that's happened probably around the same time as the turnaround has been the return of Dan Hall, playing next to Caltac. I think they're really starting to form a good partnership at the back there, which I think is there's no it's no coincidence that our turnaround in looking after our transition in defending came when those two were there. Is that your preferred partnership? Because we started with Paul at the back there as well at the beginning of the year, but have you been impressed by what Dan's been doing since he's come back? He still seems to have that little mistake or a little pass in him every now and then, which I guess he's always had. But to me, he's a confidence guy, and I think we've improved with him out there.
Yeah, that's the word I'd use to describe Dan Hall as confidence, Marty. And you think back 2 seasons, he was on fire in the centre of defence, and then he hurt himself up in Brisbane, I think it was, and he came. I don't know if he rushed back, but he came back and he just didn't look the same. And then Trianis came into the squad and took his place and really knocked his confidence, I think. And even to start this season, he was a little bit shaky, but the more game time he gets, the more comfortable he looks, and the more confidence he gains. And he gave away the penalty on the weekend. That was a bit of a calamity. There were 3 guys around the ball and none of them really wanted to get to it first. And I think he's been playing well. I think that's the preferred centre-back pairing at the moment. Paul's a young player, got a bit of development to do. He is an absolute mountain of a man. He's tall, he's thick, he's strong. He's left-footed as well, so he's got plenty of boxes that are ticked. But again, to Quaz's point, you're rolling with 3 centre-backs. I think they need one more. I think they need to bring another one in. Competition for places is what drives improvement, and you don't want them getting too comfortable. And I think they could do with probably another 3 or 4 players across the park, another centre back. They'll get Harry Steele back, but probably another wide player and maybe another attacker as well. So, but for the time being, I think Dan Hall's done an outstanding job in the centre of the defence with Brian Caltac, and they've really turned their defensive struggles around.
100%. So I know everyone watching will be going, okay, boys, it's good to have all that chat, but we want to know what you actually think of the first part of the season. Boz, I'm going to come to you first. How are we going to grade the season thus far? A, B, C, or D? I'll let you throw a plus or minus in there if you want to as well. And then let me know from this point, and I know it's hard because we haven't signed anyone in the window. We don't know who we're about to sign and stuff like that. But from where we are now, where do you think we'll finish the season? So a grade on the season so far and where you think we'll end up.
Look, my standards are high after winning the championship. So now I'm grading this first half of the season a C. I think there's plenty of room for improvement, but with that, reinforcements need to be, brought in. And I think if that does happen, I think we can finish in the top 4 and give it a red hot crack again. If reinforcements aren't brought in, well, for me, missing, the league's best player in particular, I think the goals are going to dry up. And then you got those games where it's sort of ebbs and flows, and it's really tight, 1-0, 1-1, and you need to score goals. Goals win games. We all know that. So look, yeah, it's a C. there's plenty of room for improvement. They are on the up, but they need to bring people in to ensure that they stay up there. And I think experienced players need to be brought in to help these youngsters, and they can go on with it.
And there's Quas talking about an experienced number 9. I'm sure we'll see him pounding the streets tomorrow morning and saying, Mark Jackson, come and look at me, mate, because I'll do a job for us up front. Dan, same question to you, mate. The grade for the season so far, and from what you've seen, what are you looking at for the season?
Yeah, I'm going to split it into two, Marty. I'm going to give a D- to that first sort of 4 to 5 weeks of the season. I think it was pretty average, and it was very worrying for the fans and the players and the club. They've turned it around a lot. I'll give them a B for the second half of that. They're on a 9-10 game run. They were scoring goals for fun. They've shot their way up the table. How the season finishes, as Quaz said, it all comes down to what they do in January for mine. They need reinforcements. Even without reinforcements, I still think they've got the bones of a squad that'll be a top 6 team. There's too many other teams in the comp that are really struggling. So I think they still probably sneak into the 6, but if they can add 1 or 2 quality players to what they've already got, I think, top 4 is the goal, and a repeat is on the cards. Because I think the top 6, any team in the top 6 can beat any other team on any day. And you saw that with the Mariners. They didn't play their best game against Melbourne Victory, who haven't lost a game this season, and still managed to take a point off them. So I think that it's wide open this season. I think anybody in that top 6 can beat anybody else. And I think if the Mariners can add 1 or 2 quality players to that squad, I think they're a red hot chance of going back to back.
Well, wouldn't we love to see that? And I would look forward to seeing you sitting on the sideline for a pre-game interview again for the grand final, mate. We'll book that one in nice and early. Fellas, thanks for joining me for a bit of a chat. Always good to review the season to this point. It'll be a very interesting remainder of the transfer window to see if we get those replacements in. But I know that regardless, we'll be on the sideline cheering on the fellas. Thanks heaps for your time, boys, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, Marty. Cheers, mate. Thanks, Quazzy.
See ya.
Cheers, Dan.
And welcome back to the MartyMariner Show. And as I said in the introduction, when people have birthdays, they want Porsches, they want mansions, they want all sorts of things. But we may be totally making this up. But this young man said, you know what, I'd like to appear on the MartyMariner Show. And I mean, who are we to say no to that? Might be totally made up, but we're going to run with it. Brad Tapp, welcome to the MartyMariner Show, mate. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Good, mate. Going good. And happy birthday for yesterday now. How was your birthday, mate? Did you get to celebrate much?
Yeah, it was good. I obviously had training in the morning, so got to spend it with the boys there, and then come home and just had a nice meal with the family after.
Yeah, very, very nice. And I'm sure there was plenty of salad there too, mate, because
Cool.
all that A-League contract business going on, mate. You got to be, on Bryson on your tail and stuff like that. So,
a lot of greens.
Absolutely. Mate, always ask the boys whenever we start an interview, were you always wanting to be a professional footballer? Was that the one thing that you always wanted to do?
Yeah, I think ever since I've been growing up, I've always sort of had the eye on being professional football. My dad sort of laughs at me because he brought it up the other day. He said to me when I was younger, "Oh, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to be a professional footballer." And he said, "Well, what if that doesn't work out?" I said, "Oh, I'm going to be a professional footballer." So
Love it,
to actually live that out now it's something obviously that I dreamt of doing, but didn't think it was going to be possible. But here I am, yeah.
And here you are today. And so you kicked off your career playing juniors in Blacktown. What was that like for you when you first started getting into playing football? Was it a natural thing for you to get into the games, or were you one of those that really just had to keep working at it?
Yeah, I've sort of been growing up through just kicking the ball around at the garden, and then sort of I went into just a random trial at Project 22, and then that sort of got disbanded. So I thought, oh, well, I'm going to play my footy now, and just sort of went to Blacktown. It was close by to where I lived, and then from under 12s to 18s, I've just grown up developing through there. And then, it's just been every year just trying to get better, trying to progress, and then eventually get to where I want to be.
And keep on going. And I mean, obviously, we'll talk about the issue very, very shortly. But you've played a lot in the midfield. Was that always your role, playing in the 6 in there somewhere? Is that always? I know you played a bit of centre back as well, but where did you basically start off?
Yeah, so I've always sort of been like a 6 defensive midfielder, defensive holder, but I can also play centre back and full back. But that main sort of defensive 6 role is where I sort of always been positioned. Yeah.
And so you went from Blacktown, and then was it Monty got you through to the academy? How did all that come about?
Yeah, it was a Blacktown City Grand Final in the under-18s. I sort of played at Combank, and after that, Ken Chembry and Monty sort of gave me a call and said, look, we're doing these open trials for the MYL. You should come through and it'd be a good experience for you. And then didn't really think much of it. So just sort of went there and thought it'd be a good experience for myself, like they said. And then each day they kept asking me back. And eventually they said they wanted me to stay and play for the academy. So, yeah.
And what did you notice straight away about the academy setup? Obviously there's a bit more, it starts off being the more professional kind of role?
Yeah, going from Blacktown in the juniors was obviously training three nights a week to going training every morning in the academy was obviously a big step to take. The first few sessions, I didn't really grasp that intensity and it kind of caught me off guard. But after that, I sort of built into it and caught a feel for it.
Yeah. And I guess it's not like we're talking that long ago, but was the lessons that you learned in those first few initial years at the academy, has that held you in good stead now? Has it taught you has it been a development for you year after year?
Yeah, of course. Like playing the way I play now is obviously credit to the academy. Building through all those games and just training every day has just helped me develop and progress my game in ways that I didn't think was possible before. But now I can, have a lot of thanks to give to the academy. Yeah,
absolutely. And then and heading through to NPL, and obviously that time went pretty well for you as well. Was that again another step up? Because would I be right in thinking that that's where you really started pushing into that 6 role? You sort of developed in that role around that time?
Yeah, I think a couple of years ago in the season that we won the premiership is where I sort of cemented my role through the academy as that 6. I was just sort of every week would be that sole 6 that would sort of guide the team around and just do all the dirty work sort of stuff. And and then ever since then, I've just sort of said, right, well, that's my position. That's where I want to go further. And that's sort of where I've could have sort of gone through into the A-League setup now.
No, absolutely. And captaincy came on your shoulders as well around that time. What did it mean to you to be named as captain, and how do you see that as being part of your game now? Is it even as you're out there playing now? You're obviously not captain in the A-League, but it gives you that extra responsibility, right? That must have been a big pat on the back for you at the time.
Yeah, it was an honor to be captain of those boys. I have a lot of respect for those boys, and just to be able to help them and guide them through the games each week, they'd learn off me and I'd learn off them as well. It was an honor, and sort of coming into the A-League now, I sort of look to Vuka as well, seeing how he's guiding the team. And obviously I want to help talk and communicate on the pitch, but I really listen to what he's got to say, and as well as Jacko as well. They sort of give the instructions and I sort of follow, but also want to help, give my thoughts and sort of go from there.
Absolutely. And who did you model your game on? Because as I said, I can definitely see traits of different players in from what we've seen, but who did you model your game on?
So it's funny because my dad's a massive Leeds fan, which is pretty ironic because now,
that one too,
because it's pretty ironic now because Jacko and Andreas are from Leeds, so it's a small world. But there was a player for Leeds a couple of years ago. He's at Man City now. His name's Calvin Phillips, and we used to watch all the games and just see him in that 6 role that he'd pick passes out that you wouldn't think were possible, and he'd win all his duels, and that's sort of where I was like, I want to adapt my game onto him. Yeah,
and a bit of a rumor about him might be going to the mighty Tottenham Hotspur too soon. So how would that be to see him under Ange Postecoglou?
Yeah, wow.
Play a bit of Ange ball. How good would that be to see?
That would be real.
Absolutely. Mate, grand final, I guess bittersweet because we get a win, but we got an ACL thing to happen. Can you give us a bit of an idea? Obviously, the excitement building up to the day. I mean, it was a fantastic season. The injury. How do you reflect back now on that day?
Yeah, I remember it was a bit of a harsh day, I think is the word I'd use. 4 minutes in, I go down with what I thought wasn't too bad of a knock. I sort of landed, I went up for a ball, I've come down and I've twisted, and then I felt something pop, but I didn't want to, obviously it's the grand final, didn't want to come off. Went to the sideline, did a few tests and was good to go back on. And then I think 10 minutes later, my first pivot change, I went down again. And I remember I was laying on the ground and I was just looking up, watching them St. George at the time going the counter attack, and I thought, oh, it's just I sort of knew the bad news was coming. So yeah.
And obviously, injuries like that, there's the physical side and the mental side.
Yeah.
Physically, we can come back from those things, but tell me about the mental side of it straight away, because was it one of those things, was there any doubt about I'm just never going to play, or were you straight away, I've got to get this right, stay focused?
Well, yeah, I think it helped that I had a 2-year scholarship, which meant okay, I was going to be out for this season, but I have the whole of next year to prove myself and prove that I deserve to be in this setup.
Yeah.
So obviously at the first initial few weeks before getting surgery, I was like, oh, I'm out for the whole season, and it was really hard to take. But once I got that surgery, I thought, right, there's no point of being like that. Let's just get back on the high horse and just get my recovery done the best I can, leave no stone unturned, and go from there.
And how long was that season? Because 2022, 23, you're watching, you're recovering, you're sort of doing a lot of work, and it was a successful season for the club. Did that, in a way, make it tougher for you to sort of sit there and watch, and not because you want to be a part of it, or did it motivate you to keep on going?
Yeah, definitely motivate. Every day I'd come in and everyone would be buzzing because of how well we were doing, which would shift onto me, which would mean I want to get back and help these boys even more, even push them even further, Yeah. And obviously being a midfielder, Nizzy and Max, if I can push them to be even better and keep them going, then we can go up another gear. So
absolutely. Yeah. You're definitely been putting a lot of pressure on those fellas, and we'll have a chat about that very soon too. I just want to talk about the community, because obviously everyone talks about the Mariners, massive community club, and I know in seeing you in the year, you're sort of sitting there, there's player meetups and the team's getting ready, and they say, right, you guys can go out and do some autographs and whatever. And I know a lot of people were coming up to you saying, oh, how's the injury, how's it going, and all this sort of stuff. Did that help, but was it also a hindrance because it was also reminding you the fact that you're not back out there playing, or was it the community's behind me here? It's again a bit more of a motivation?
Yeah, obviously there was pros and cons to that. They obviously wanted to see me back out in the field, but the cons were sort of if we're losing, and they're asking me how's the injury, I thought, or maybe I could be out there to maybe help them, push them on. And so there was obviously good times and bad times, but the community's always been around me and they've always been supportive of me, so I've got them to thank as well for my recovery.
Absolutely. And it's probably that captaincy part of you too, because you don't want to let the boys down. You want to be out there and you want to be doing your thing and stuff like that. So you get back into training and you're feeling good. Was there a period of time when you're first getting back into it properly, and I don't mean just like the recovery process, you mentally, was it a struggle going in for tackles, pushing yourself a little bit more? Was there, I just don't want to push any? How was that for you? Because for a lot of people, that's a really tough thing.
Yeah, when I first was coming back, I sort of was a bit off the intensity, as you would. You've been out for a year. All these boys have been training every day. So I kind of struggled with that with the first couple of weeks. But as it happens, you just start to pick it up. So, but yeah, tackles have never been really a problem of mine. I always sort of fly in. I think, it's sort of my game, just to go in hard, because I think if you go in harder for a tackle, you're less likely to get injured. So that's the way I look at it.
That might be the Leeds United blood that you have in here. But we'll take it A to Phil while we're here too. But it's been so far so good. And obviously the season, Asian Cup as well. Did you sort of look at the season and think, well, I'm probably going to get some opportunities? Players are leaving at the moment. We had a lot of changing going on in the club. We knew we had the Asian Cup. Did you kind of think to yourself, you know what, I'm going to get some football here because of all the changes going on?
Well, yeah, that sort of in pre-season we had a lot of change, like you said. So I thought, well, this is probably the perfect time, a new coach coming in, just to sort of show him what I'm all about, and then just whatever comes from that, grab any minutes I can and just sort of keep progressing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Mark Jackson comes in. We were sort of, Monty had left. We were sort of coachless for a bit. Mark Jackson comes in. How many discussions did you have with Jacko before you mentioned the fact about your dad supports Leeds United? Was it like in the first minute that you spoke to him, he said, oh, by the way, or did it take a bit of time?
I think it was actually Andy Benau that said straight away, this boy supports Leeds. And because obviously Andreas was at the club before, so he sort of knew about it. So I think before I even got to there on my first day, Andy sort of said, yeah, look, he's a Leeds boy.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
That's what a vibe manager's for, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah,
probably gave you a copy of the book as well, mate. How good is he? Good bloke, Andy Benau. So playing in Asia, a few trips away. So we're getting into the season. Obviously, we had a loss first up, but then we start picking up some points. Before we talk about the season proper for us, but playing over in Asia, what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was a sort of a different experience, just going over there, seeing how the culture is over there, and just, the game in Philippines was a real shock, a real wake-up call, because the pitch wasn't the best, and then we sort of had to adapt our play style and just sort of get on with the conditions just to sort of get that result. And same in Bali, that was going out. I remember starting that game, going out into that field. It was so hot, mate. It was so humid, but just sort of had to push through and just get that result and really dig deep those 2 games.
Absolutely. I mean, especially in Bali, I mean, you guys are putting on a sweat after the first couple of minutes. It was like watching the over 45s play, man. It was absolutely drenching. But it probably was a good thing for you, though. Do you think, playing against those teams, to sort of get back into it, getting to know the boys as well? Because obviously, what was the mood like in the camp? People leaving the club, and it's sort of all this change going on, but everyone still had to stick together. There were still football games to play, right?
Yeah, well, I think it proves now how much we've stuck together. The first 4 rounds, everyone sort of wrote us off, I guess. They said, the champions are last, and now you look at our run now, we're 10 games undefeated, and it just shows how close we all are, how we stick to the same processes, and, the culture's always been great here, so it just shows.
Absolutely. And tell us a bit about Mark Jackson, because he's, in speaking to him, he's very much, he wants the group to stay together. He believes in working hard. He knows what he wants to do. How have you found him as a coach? What is he like at training? And what do you think in particular for you does he bring out for you?
Yeah, he's unreal. He's given me my first real shot, and so I'll always owe him for that. And he's really given me that confidence to sort of go out and obviously be free when I play, but stick to the game plan as well. So, he's a great coach, and he's great people management as well. So, yeah, that's something that he's got quality on and off the field. So, yeah.
And is it surreal, that whole Leeds connection? Does it kind of feel a little bit? I'm sure your dad's in your ear too about copping a few Leeds shirts from him or something like that. But is it a little bit surreal having him from that part of the world as well?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think my mum was saying to me the other day, out of all the places in the world, the coach that comes into the Mariners was from the Leeds setup, which is, growing up watching all the Leeds games, having all the Leeds kits that my dad's forced upon me on Christmas and stuff like that. So,
love it.
Yeah, the connection now is just, you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah. Do you have a favourite ever Leeds player?
It'd probably have to be Calvin Phillips, to be honest. It'll
have to be Calvin. Yeah.
That's the way I modelled my game, yeah.
Yeah, would have to be him. Yeah, I remember Leeds, I mean, obviously being a Tottenham fan, but Leeds obviously playing in the white, and we both had the Admiral kit at the same time. They look very, very similar. So I always kept an eye out for Leeds. They play some decent football. Back in the day, way before your time, I'm sure I'll chat to your dad about it someday, for playing like that. So I think it was your debut in the A-League against MacArthur, off the bench. There was a goal that was scored, and I think followed that was the longest VAR decision that I'd ever. Now, it must have been big enough for you to say, I'm on the debut, I'm running on the field, I've scored a goal, all my dreams have come true, the crowd has gone up, and then we wait, I think it was about 3 days before the decision came. Mate, what was that like for you? Because that must have been one hell of a roller coaster that you were sitting there on the field going, what is going on?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster, I sort of come on the field for, I think, 4 minutes or something like that, and the ball's come in from a wide free kick or a second phase of play, and then I sort of, in the time, knew that either Alo or Tulio were offside because, as you see, I just smack it in, I just smash it because I was sort of like, oh, well, it's going to get disallowed. Then we get set up into our shape for the goal kick, and the ref goes over to the lino, and then all of a sudden points to halfway, and everyone goes up, and everyone's running towards me. And it was just, it was surreal. And then, but I sort of, watching the replay back, I knew straight away, it was a no goal. So yeah, it was just, but in that moment, I didn't know what to do. I saw Niz running at me. I saw the boys running at me. So yeah, it's unreal.
What is it like as a player? Because obviously we better not be too critical about VAR because we don't want to get anyone in trouble. But I mean, to me, the thing about VAR, ball goes in the back of the net. The referee looks at the lines and not offside goal. The crowd can celebrate. Players can celebrate. Is there that thing now? The ball goes in the line and everyone goes, can we celebrate? Because you might have a bit of doubt or just that period of time. It must just, a goal used to lift teams and really pump everyone up and go again. Is it a bit less? Is it a bit deflating now? It's like we just got to wait.
Well, that's the thing. A call now can change the whole game. And even when, like you said, when you score a goal, you have to wait for that confirmation. You go back to halfway and everyone's sort of looking at the ref, just making sure it's okay. You can't really celebrate until you're 100% sure, and that ref gives it's all clear.
Absolutely. And quick we get rid of VAR, the better. But that is just totally my opinion and nothing to do with the Central Coast Mariners, let me assure you. Yeah. Then we got an A-League contract. You get upgraded. So how did all that happen? Was that a phone call from Jacko to say, hey, mate, we're doing this? How did all that come about for you? Because that's a pretty big thing too.
Yeah, so that was sort of in the Philippines. When we were in the Philippines, I was just sort of going about my day. We played the game the night before, and the next day as we were traveling home, I sort of got a call from Simo. I was just in the team room and he said, hey, mate, do you mind meeting myself and Jacko in the lobby? So I sort of was like, oh, hope I'm not in trouble here.
I was going to say, do you think, what have I done wrong?
I was like, oh, no. I was like, what gear do I need to bring to the bus and stuff like that? So, I went to the lobby and, they were pretty happy for me. I had smiles and they just sort of said, like, we think you have a massive future ahead and we want to honor that. You've been great so far and you're running out of contract, so we want to offer you a 2-year extension. And I was stoked. I was a bit speechless. I didn't know what to say. And it was unreal.
Yeah. Well, and what is it like? Because obviously Matty Simon, club legend, having him around the place, he must be a really good bloke just to have that chat to as well, because he's been there, done that. He came in a young age as well and a lot of pressure and different things. What's it like for you having Simo around the joint?
Yeah, he's a club legend and he's a massive mentor to a lot of the boys. So just to see him and just, you always see Simo around, you always listen to him, what he's got to say. And he's always bringing the culture up, on game day. He brings us all into a huddle before the game and just gives us a motivational talk, which we take on the field. And he's a big part of the Mariners family and he always has been.
Yeah, and always will be as well. Love seeing those huddles pre-game. It kind of gets us already as well, which is fantastic to see. Yeah. You make your debut starting against Perth. Jacko walks over to you and says, you're starting this week, mate. What was that like?
Yeah, I was sort of a bit nervous, but keen as well, I guess you could say. I thought, well, this is sort of the opportunity that I've always wanted, so I've got to take it. And, massive game, New Year's game. So I thought, well, what a time to start, first start. So I owe it to everyone. I owe it to the boys, the staff, and for putting their faith in me. And, we got the result that night. So
that's a massive result. Are you someone who gets overly nervous before a game, or are you one of those really cool kind of guys? I've got this covered.
I don't know, it's not overly nervous, but I think a little bit about the game and how the game's going to go in the sheds before the game. But as soon as I touch that grass, I'm focused and all the nerves go away.
Yeah. Any of those silly superstitions and put your left sock on first or anything like that sort of stuff are going on?
Nah, I try to stay away from those because obviously when you're away, you can't control those. So yeah.
Good to see. Just be ready. And mate, you had an absolute cracker of a game. You start the next game against the Wanderers again. Ultimately, a great result. So 2 starts this season for you, mate, and 2 wins in the A-League. So that's got to be 100% record that you've got to carry through. But a bit of a knock. When you got the knock in that game, we talked before about with the ACL, the injury. Was there any kind of, oh, hang on a minute, was there more of a worry for you that here we go again? Or did you feel, no, you know what? I know what it is. I'm fine.
Yeah, I sort of went in for a challenge around the 60th minute, I think it was, and I've pulled out and I felt my knee hyperextend a little bit. So I sort of thought, oh, hang on. But at the same time, I knew it wasn't as bad as what happened before because I didn't feel that pop or hear anything. So, I carried on for another 20 minutes or 15 minutes or however long it was. And I sort of got through the game and went along my duty. And then the next morning I thought, oh, hang on, it's a bit sore here, a bit swollen. And then try to train. But it just wasn't happening.
Yeah, it wasn't 100%. Well, we hope we see you back on the park very, very soon, mate. Look, we had a couple of questions that got fired in, so I might just come at you with these couple of things. Yeah. And the first one, just speaking of injuries, Harry Steele from Terrigal wrote in, and he said they don't make players like they used to. I played a game with a broken foot. Do you have any comment for Harry Steele? I mean, he's been out for a number of weeks now. I think he's in a moon boot. I mean, that's a bit soft of himself, right?
Yeah, fair play to him. He played 70 minutes on a broken foot, or hairline fracture. I think it is hairline, being key word there, but whatever.
Broken toenail, I heard it was.
But yeah. But no, I think he's actually turned boxer now. I think if you see his stories every day, him and Andy Bernal, hitting the pad. So I hope that career goes well for him.
Yeah, it'd be a bit. I know. I think it'd be more. Is he a flyweight, lightweight? I don't know what he would be, but I wouldn't argue with him that because I reckon he'd probably be able to throw a few. And we've also had a message in from Mr. Josh Nisbet, who said, "Can you hurry up and get back because I'm sick of defending and I want to go back to the 10." Nizzy, obviously, you've been around him for a while now, and this position that we've seen him push into, this number 10 kind of role that we're sort of doing, you sort of sat behind him a couple of times. In your opinion, is he the most underrated footballer that we have in the A-League?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people know the quality that Nizzy has, just the way his passing, his dribbling is, he's got, I think 4 assists or something in the last 5 games. So everyone knows what he has, but he gets overlooked, I guess. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of his height, but just the way he carries himself each week just to carry on and just keep performing the way he does is just, credit to him, really.
Absolutely. And do you sort of, obviously in training games or in the 2 games that you started to, do you see him play balls through and you go, wow, I didn't even see that gap? Like, do you actually see it from behind and go, this guy is at the next level with the vision that he's got?
Yeah, definitely the vision. And something he also does is he's just so agile. There'll be a couple of players closing him down and he'll just get out of spaces and you'll just think, how's he got out of there? But yeah, he just wriggles his way out.
Yeah. And a big favourite of our show too, Maxi Bala. We can't talk about the centre of the park without mentioning him. He leads the team when Vicar hasn't been there. He's captain of the team. What's it like playing next to Max? He seems to be, for us, that very similar to yourself, that very settled, controlled, composed middle of the park. We can talk all day about his ball through for Jing to get the equaliser on the way. That was absolutely the Messi-esque, I think I call it.
Yeah.
But, you've played with him a few times. Obviously, you know him. Is that Max Ballard? Is he that composed guy that you just love just playing next to?
Yeah, Maxi's one of my good mates as well as Niz, and I've sort of come up with Max through the academy. Played with him a few times, so we've always, worked really well together, and he's always sort of steered me around and helped me out on the pitch, and I've learned a lot from him. So I know, like Niz, what qualities he has, and he's a very composed guy, like you said, and he also has a great passing range, and just like you saw on the weekend, he can change a game for us with that one pass.
No, absolutely. And are they things you want to develop in your game? Because I've seen you play some killer balls already, but is that a part of your game that you want to keep pursuing? Because obviously we'd love to see you stick a few more in the net that the VAR don't cancel out, but is that a part of the game that you really want to start pushing on yourself?
Yeah, of course. I sort of have that defensive side of my game sort of locked down at the moment, but I sort of want to develop that more attacking side and, win the ball back and carry it forward and then maybe grab an assist or a few goals as well to help out. That would be nice.
Absolutely, mate. And you'd be a couple of dollars on sports bet too, even though we promote responsible gambling here on the MartyMariner Show, of course. But just put a couple of quiet ones on because one's due, I'm sure. Mate, you said at the start that you always want to be a professional footballer. Here you are. The contract is there. The next 5 years or so for yourself, obviously we would love to say stay at the Mariners, work hard, maybe captain the club one day. But in your mind, where would you like to end up and challenge yourself?
Obviously, the goal is overseas. I think a lot of footballers want to play at the highest level they can. But for the meantime, I'm just sort of breaking through and I just want to sort of take day by day, week by week and just consistently play well and just do everything I can for the boys. But eventually is to get a move overseas and hopefully just achieve everything I can and do the best that I can.
Absolutely, mate. And the way you've started, even though it's just a handful of games, but those that have seen you for a few years now, especially the mental strength that you've shown to come back from such a big injury to be where you are now, mate. Absolute credit to you.
Thank you.
Mate, thanks for coming on to have a chat. It's been an absolute ball. Love chatting to you. Congrats on the first couple of games. We hope to see you back very, very soon in the middle of the park. And we'll catch up with you later in the season. And hopefully we might even end up talking some semi-final football.
Perfect, mate. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure being on.
No worries, mate. We'll take care. We'll catch you soon.
Perfect, mate. Thank you.
See ya. And that brings us to the end of our show for today. A massive thank you, first of all, to Brad Tapp for calling in for a bit of a chat, bit of a chinwag, a bit of a conversation. what a charming, engaging young man to talk to these young fellas who just, are just so positive about their futures and the setbacks that he's had with injuries and everything like that. He's as engaging off the camera as he is on. He's a great young fella, and I hope, fingers crossed, that we see him back very, very soon. Sure we will. Back on the park and doing what he's been doing in the last few games. When he started, he's been absolutely sensational there with Maxi Ballard in the middle of the park. And it's just been great to see him out there. So hopefully he gets back out very, very soon. And we thank him once again for joining us here on the show. And again, a massive thank you to Adam Kwasnik and to Dan McCamley from 963 FM, Coast FM, the A-team. Can't wait. Big shift for them on Sunday, big double header. And speaking of which, a grand final replay for us at home is probably enough to get you to Industry Group Stadium. And I look forward to seeing everyone there for that. But I know a number of us travelled out to Wanderers Park in the tail end of last year. The girls went down to 3-0 to the Western Sydney Wanderers, and I know personally that after that game, they were filthy. They marked in their calendar when this game was going to be. They are lining this one up. They've had a massive week. They're going to need our help. They're going to need us to be that 12th player in the stands, and we need to be there. If you're going to be there for the men's game, stick around. It's going to be an absolute cracker of a game. And the girls will need us to give all our support and energy to them to get the result, because they're in the top 4 now. How good is that? We want them to stay there. We want them to push on. It's time to play our part, Central Coast. Make sure you are there. Well, what a show to kick off 2024. Thanks so much for sticking around till the end. I greatly appreciate it, and look forward to bringing you another episode next week where, amongst other things, we'll have a bit of a report card on our women's team. Looking forward to presenting that one to you as well. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for sticking around. Don't forget to subscribe, like, thumbs up, and all that sort of stuff. You know the drill. It's been the MartyMariner Show.